Welcome to the Aim for Success podcast. I'm Joni Knighty, a licensed psychotherapist and certified clinical hypnotist and trainer. I'm also the founder of Aim for Success and Joni Knighty Hypnosis. I've been practicing for over 27 years, and I'm excited about sharing my experiences and those of my guests. Be sure and check out my websites, aim-for-success.com and joniknightyhypnosis.com to learn more about my services and products. I also invite you to check out my store, aim-store.net. As a gift to you for listening to this podcast, use the code SUCCESS to receive 25% off your first self-hypnosis audio purchase. You are listening to episode 3 of the Aim for Success podcast featuring Jeff and Jacob Pishko. Jeff is the senior assistant swim coach at the Bowl School in Jacksonville, Florida, and also a former swimmer and conference finalist for East Carolina University. Jeff has an impressive list of coaching experience dating back to 1993, where he served as assistant coach at East Carolina University, and he has served as head and assistant coach for USA Swimming Zone teams, including the Zone Select Camp. His son Jacob Pishko joins us on the podcast. Jacob swims in the national group at the Bowl School and recently placed in the top 15 at USA Swimming's Open Water Junior Nationals. Jacob was a high school state team qualifier, a chairperson for Florida Swimming's Diversity Committee, and participated in an internship with Florida Swim Network as a high school season social media correspondent. Listen as we discuss topics like father-son coaching dynamic, endurance and open water swimming, mental toughness and the importance of consistently working on this part of the triangle, and how being playful can help athletes learn faster and more easily. Okay, so hi everyone, it's Joni Knighty, and as I mentioned in my earlier introduction, I have with me today Jeff and Jacob Pishko, and hopefully I pronounced that correctly, right?
That's perfect.
Anyway, you guys, I'm just so impressed, looking over. I ask you both just to give me a little bit of bio, even though I know you both, and it's a lot more fun to talk about what we've done together and what we know about each other. But I really found it interesting to go over the list, and Jeff, especially you've done a lot. You've done a lot of coaching. I mean, not that I'm surprised. I mean, now is your title still senior assistant coach at the Bowl School?
It is.
Okay, just checking because I know there have been a lot of changes over at the Bowl School, and that's exciting.
No, it's stayed the same, that structure. Although I've kind of officially taken on camp director now as well. So.
Oh wow! Okay, well that's a big responsibility. So Greenville Swim Club is one of the places that you coach. Is that Greenville, South Carolina?
No, Greenville, North Carolina. It's where East Carolina University is there, which is where I swam.
Okay.
So that's that kind of, it was just a natural transition for me into that role, and then also as an assistant with the college team as well.
Yeah, speaking of that, I was noticing you, one of the things that I didn't know is that you were a conference finalist in the 200 fly and 400 IM for East Carolina University. And so I kind of tied that together with your son being this phenomenal distance endurance swimmer. So that's sort of maybe in the genes or something?
Well, I think what's ironic is that I was a 200 butterflyer, so Jacob does a 200 fly, and then actually my wife swam at East Carolina as well, and she was a distance freestyler.
Oh, really? Okay, I did not know that, and I just met her for the first time at this past Bowls meet, so that was wonderful. Well, there you go then, Jacob. You were destined to do these very difficult events. But for you, they don't seem to be all that hard. And that's one of the things I do want to talk about is your exceptional schedule in terms of difficulty, and how that's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons that I wanted to interview you is I'm just been so impressed by not only the schedule that you take on, but the fact that you rarely do, as I'm following you, whether I'm at the meet or if I'm on Meet Mobile, because I love to follow you and talk to you during the meets, but I rarely see that you've scratched an event or anything like that. Whereas, a lot of swimmers will do that because they're focusing on, getting certain cuts, or, they just feel like they need to put their energy and focus on those events. And I like that about you, because it just never ceases to amaze me as I keep following, and I see that you're still placing, really high, and you're dropping scads of time. Sometimes it's just unbelievable. So anyway, let's talk about that. I'm really interested in this father-son coaching dynamic, and just how you all have always worked together. And I know that because Jacob has told me, and a lot of times I talk to someone, and maybe a pair, it could be daughter and mother, or just that dynamic. I've talked to the kids, the athletes, and they don't have as a positive as response as your son. So yeah, can you guys talk a little bit about that and what it's like for each of you?
I think it's makes the sport a lot easier because I can talk to him about anything, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a really, really good relationship with your dad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's amazing, because there are a lot of athletes, and we're talking about the sport of swimming, so we're just going to use the word swimmer over and over again because that's what we're talking about. There are a lot of swimmers that don't even want to talk about their practices. They don't want to talk about their events. They don't want to talk about swimming at all with their parents.
Yeah, and I think I think a couple of things come into play, with our relationship is, and this is not a negative thing. I think it's a very positive thing. But Jacob's personality is actually a lot like my wife's in a lot of ways, and I think that's a big reason why we get along really well, because we actually really balance each other out a lot, But
Okay.
I try to balance that too with, obviously being, a parent, so I mean, certainly there are times, I think just like, with any other, father-son, dynamic. I mean, there are certainly times where we don't get along really well for sure. And I think that's just normal. But, I think for the most part, I mean, we get along really well. And, I don't generally, I mean, sometimes I'll ask for his feedback or on things, or ask him about particular, times. But I try not to carry it home,
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible. And I've tried to work really hard at doing that. Just so we try to keep it at the pool as much as possible. Sometimes I put my coach's hat on at home, maybe mistakenly, but I generally try to do that as much as I can. And I think that's probably one of the big reasons, that we get along. And it's balanced out. I don't directly coach him all the time. It's usually a few days a week.
Sure.
He's also, and that's just when we split out for the distance group, because he swims with Coach Peter Verhoff in the national group,
Yes.
with bowls and all. So, so he's swimming with Peter several days a week, as well. So that balances out too. So we're not, being overloaded, with each other either. So.
That's great. But also I love your awareness, the fact that, and you've heard me talk before at Team Talks, and I think you too, Jacob, just individually, about how, it's never going to be perfect. There aren't perfect relationships, and we're not going to have perfect performances for the most part, but having that awareness and just caring enough to pay attention and try to make changes puts us ahead of the game.
Well, and I think, maybe Jacob can speak to this a little bit too, but I think one of the really neat things with Peter coming in, there's been a lot of changes that have happened in terms of how we want the kids to look at swimming and how to swim through the water. And Jacob's done a really good job of embracing a lot of that, and it's really showing in a lot of his results that he's seeing. Even recently, of a lot of those changes that are going on. Just script technique things that are happening. And he's worked really hard at it too, and he's done a really good job. As have almost all the kids have done a really good job. And really just embracing those changes, and just really trying to make those changes, going forward, and it's showing very quickly. We're seeing a lot of really good results already.
Well, that is wonderful. And I think also what you were describing is that, Jacob has and the others have taken on a great attitude about change. And of course, every time I come over to speak, that's what I'm talking about. I'm always talking about that. And I love that, I really appreciate, and I want to say this to you, Jeff, you not only bringing me in, but, the amount of time that you've allowed me to work with the athletes, because a lot of times teams will bring a speaker in, or they'll bring someone like me in to work, but they don't keep up the work. And the mental side of the sport, that part of the triangle, which I think is, it's equally important. The physical and the technical training is amazing. And again, I always talk about how you use the conscious part of the mind for that. It's really important to memorize and rehearse and repeat that. But the mental side, leaving that to chance is a really bad idea, even starting from the age group, from the age groupers, because that has to be in place when you show up for competition. So can you guys talk a little bit about just what it's like because a lot of people don't know what it's like to work with me. They might hear about me, or they might see my picture on a website or even a video, but they don't really know what it's like. And not everyone is local. So sometimes they may be a little apprehensive. We're going to work together, but they don't know what that first FaceTime or Skype session is going to be like with this lady, So can you guys offer any insight into what it's like to work with me? And you can say anything you want. It won't hurt my feelings. I'm mentally very, very tough, and yeah. Well, like Jacob, when we talk, is it super serious all the time?
No, it's very relaxed and open. Like, I can say anything I want to you, and it will help me really.
Good. And sometimes I'm a little crazy, right? Like, yeah, just because I'm trying to make a point, and we know this to be true, that when we're playful, we have a tendency to learn so much better. And so I think that's why it works so well. And so, do you have a favorite technique? I know you've used a lot in the guide. We still have a lot left to do. I'm going to hold that up. I always forget to do that. See, that's what it looks like. AIM gold medal. It keeps evolving and changing, but and there's I always tell Caitlin Dressel, there's her picture, because I could not have designed this if I tried.
So every time before I get on the blocks, I usually do, I think it's the energy sonnet, right?
Oh yes, that energy audit.
One where you clap on your thighs, and then you clap your hands together and then rub them and then shake it out or something. That usually helps me.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you do that, because what we're trying to teach athletes is we want to get energy into the body before you leave the blocks, instead of leaving, from a standing position and then expecting the energy to show up, because it's going to take a little while. If you notice athletes like Caleb Dressel and, just some of especially the sprinters, they have to have energy in the body before they leave the blocks. And so that's a really great that you take the time. Yes, at the last meet that I attended, I was checking to see if you were doing it, what you were doing behind the blocks. It's interesting because when I show up at the meet, I'm not usually looking for what other people are looking at. I rarely see what's on the board in terms of time. I don't need to. You can normally look at just the coach's body language and the athletes and tell whether or not they're happy with that result. Because, with the training cycles being different, and sometimes you're broken down, and, maybe that was a phenomenal swim, if you added 8 seconds, given where you are in the training cycle and what you're specifically working on, whether it was stroke technique. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to at meets, no matter what size the meet is, to have like a very small goal, whether it's like stroke counts or underwater kicks.
Yes. And that's great advice. I was going to ask you that a little bit later on. What are some tidbits of information that you would share that will help, other athletes and even parents and coaches that are listening? What stands out in your mind as important? And I do think those little things are often overlooked, and even when coaches encourage that, athletes are so eager, to just go out and perform. And I had a really great conversation at a meet. It was a Pro Series meet at University of Texas. I was just having dinner with a very casual dinner with Ryan Murphy and his mom and my daughter, Ashley. And he was talking to another swimmer, and he was saying that it's really, really important to be willing to fail, if that's what's necessary at that particular meet, because your goal is to work on swimming your race a certain way and you're preparing for something bigger and you really want it, then you have to be willing to do what you came to do. And if someone else chooses to, to change that up and go for the win or whatever, to stick to the plan that you and your coach have. So, but it sounds like you're doing that. That's the way that you do things, Jacob. And I don't know, is that something that your dad taught you, or you all decided together, or that's just, I don't know. How did you end up being that way?
I guess it's a mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some part of those great conversations that you all have. Yeah.
Well, I think part of it too is, not to take any, we have 2 other boys as well, other than Jacob. But I think one thing that's, Jacob's always done a really good job of is he's always been really very self-driven in most areas in his life.
Right.
So there's not that he doesn't need nudges occasionally, but he's generally, I'd say 99% of the time, he's very goal driven. He does a really good job of setting goals for himself and things like that. So I think a lot of it just comes internally, from just the person that he is.
Yeah.
So going back to a little bit about something you were saying that Ryan said, I heard and I can't remember, it was at the Atlanta Classic meet this past weekend, and I can't remember if it was one of the coaches there, might even been Greg Troy, I can't remember, but one of the things they said, it really jumped out at me, especially about a lot of these elite level athletes, is that they are willing to go, and this probably more pertains to the training side than anything else, but I think on racing too, is that they are willing to go to places that most others fear,
Yes.
in terms of how hard to push themselves, those types of things. So and I think Jacob does a really good job of that. We've got a number of other athletes that do a really good job of that, they are willing to really put themselves out there, both, in races, in training. And that's where you start to see a lot of that just monumental, improvement, in races and events that they do. So.
How about that open water swimming? Can we talk about that a little bit? I have actually never been to an open water swim meet, and I want to. That's something that I want to do. So I'm really happy that I have the privilege of knowing you so that I can come and cheer for you at some point. And how are you so good at it? Because it, from what I've seen, because I do watch, the videos, it looks like so many people running into the water at one time. I don't know how you break loose or get away from each other. So can you educate us about that?
Well, I like open water because there's no lane lines. And I kind of think of those lane lines as like limits because I can't really move that far. But then in open water, I can basically go wherever I want and use that open space towards my advantage.
Nice.
And I can draft off of people.
Yeah. So you've learned that skill. That's an important skill, isn't it? Okay. Well, that's very interesting. And so it also ties into the theme, I think, of who you are, is that, you're just not a fan of limits, and you seem to be willing and excited about learning whatever it takes to get away from those. And so I like that. But yeah, I just wondered about that. It just looked like a crazy time, like the start, and how do you not get injured? I don't know.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I got at the start of open water junior nationals, I got elbowed in the head twice.
Okay. Well, you did really well. You placed high. You placed 15th nationally, right?
13th.
13th. Sorry. Oh my goodness. Well, that's an important correction, and I'm glad you. Yeah. Well, let's see. So your dad sent me top 15 placing. So I get it. Okay. So top 15, but you were actually 13. Even better. So, but nationally, that, I think a lot of times you hear that number, and when you're at different venues, different types of meet, different levels, sometimes you may be used to being first and second, or, I know you like to be first, but that is unbelievable in terms of, we're talking about the national meet, the national level at your age. And I expect that it's going to get even better. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So do you want to say anything about how maybe some athletes could get over? I mean, we could definitely use some of the techniques that I teach to help them get over their fear of the creatures. I mean, do you even think about that?
No.
Yeah.
Usually when you're swimming, you don't really see them.
Yeah.
But I know they're there, but I don't really see them, and I don't really care.
Yeah. And when we're rational, they're not really after you anyway, are they? They're just hanging out. So what, so in the guide and maybe the workshop that Ryan and I did even back in the summer, what's something that you found useful other than the energy audit? Now, I know you listen to the audios. You do use the audios. Okay. And I would love for you to talk about that some, and maybe even your dad, just having been present at some of the team talks. And so I added hypnosis and self-hypnosis to, as one of the skills that I use and teach. That oftentimes scares a lot of teams. It scares a lot of people away because, maybe they've heard some story about a stage hypnotist, or they've heard a story about, maybe something unfortunate that happened because they went to someone, that did something they may not have been qualified to do, something like that. But it's really, once I come in and explain about the brain and you see what happens, it's not really all that strange, right, guys? Yeah.
There have been times where we're at meets and like my dad goes down to have dinner with my mom, and then he'll walk back up, and I'm just looks like I'm just laying there dead.
Yeah.
But it's not that weird.
So you're listening to an audio and just getting some recovery time and resting. And so that is one of the things that I like, because, as a parent, when my girls were swimming, I just would hear people say, what they were going to go back and rest or sleep. And then they would talk about how they couldn't sleep because they were overthinking their events, or they really didn't have a hotel room to go back to sleep. But with the audios, you can listen to them and they don't take that long and rest just about anywhere. So thanks for mentioning that. And then as a coach, thank you for also being willing to confirm that nothing strange or weird happens in any of my team talks. I just am teaching athletes. I think it's so important to understand how your brain works in general, but you should understand that. It is very important to understand that and know that why would I use a technique, or why is it important for me to insert something at a particular time? So.
Well, and I think when you've come and talk to the athletes, at bowls, as a group, one of the things that I think has been really good that you've done is that, one, you make them feel very relaxed. You get down on a very personal level with them, and so you make them feel very comfortable in talking to you, and be able to ask questions and just kind of be themselves. But then I think on top of that, once you've established that you're not going to be some just boring talker that's going to come in and be very monotone and those types of things.
I know.
I think that really opens things up for the kids and allows them to think a lot more openly about things that they never really even thought about before, and how they process things for races, how they process things for training, and those are the things that I've seen as such invaluable tools that have really benefited not only Jacob, but a lot of other kids in the program that I know have talked to you in the past as well. So those are the types of things that I'm really grateful for, in having you and being able to come and talk to the kids. So thank you for that. I think that's been awesome.
Well, thank you for saying that I'm not boring. I appreciate that. Because, I would never, ever make it through an hour if that, as a speaker, that way. It just is not my style. It would not work. And I don't think we connect with people very well that way either. So yeah, there's no limits to what I'll do to be entertaining and get my point across, I suppose. As long as I stay within the boundaries, and I do a pretty good job of that. Any particular information, advice, anything you've thought about that you would want to share with everyone listening, that you've maybe discovered or you've always known, just something that you think, well, I wish I'd put that out there?
Well, I think it's been, for any athlete, in terms of, having worked with you, you've always been encouraging to obviously, give them things that will help them, get beyond, different fears or obstacles that they're, that they're having, either through swimming or in life in general. But I think you've also done an incredible job of showing them that, okay, it's not just a one way thing to do it this way. It's, find what works for you and what you feel comfortable with as a person,
Yes.
and utilizing some of these, tips or strategies that you've shown a lot of the kids, and trying to fit it into what they're, I guess if I'm thinking in terms of race preparation,
Right.
Type of thing is, everybody's got different ways of how they prepare for races. It's not just, one size fits all for each athlete. And I think, with you, it's always been, very encouraging to, be your own person. And then here are strategies that you can use to intertwine with the person that you are.
And that's why I like having so many strategies and so many tools to offer them, because some of them they're going to look at and say, no way. Or they may try them, and say, oh, that, this works for me. But the whole point of having and developing, this being a work in progress, and developing a pre-competition routine and an in-competition routine, and then having that post-reflection, I think is so important to be a trial and error type development. And then it's their own. And that's what we want. But it also incorporates the coaches and the athletes. You have some goals, by the way. Do you want to share any of those, or you want to keep those a secret? I'm fine with either one.
I want to make summer juniors in the 2 fly and distance. But yeah, that's my big goal for the summer. And I want to get my futures cut, which I think I will definitely be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. Do you have a favorite event if you had to choose one?
5K.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. You don't get that answer too often.
Well, I know he recently told me, he's like, if I could just do open water all the time, I would just do that.
Yeah. Well, someday that may be a major focus and at the very highest level. Anyway, thank you guys so much for doing this. I know people are going to enjoy this interview, watching it. It will probably, it'll probably be Memorial Day when I'll have a watch party and we'll do something fun. And be sure and share it with your friends, because I know that they would like to see it as well. There'll be a lot of hypnotists watching who are training with me. They're going to be training with me this summer, and some of them have already started, so that they can start taking on some of this work all over the country. Probably the near future. I've been talking some with John Sokovich, and I'm very excited to put this parent program together. I'm going to be picking your brain and trying to get, just all that wealth of information that you have, if you don't mind sharing.
Oh, anytime.
All right. Sounds great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.